Thanks, guys, for taking out the time. Start off with quick introductions to give you guys a sense of who we are on the panel. So I can start. My name is Chirag. I'm leading gaming and entertainment relationships at Sensor Tower. We're a mobile data analytics platform. We're based out of San Francisco, so great to be moderating this panel. Why don't we start off with Yiannis? Give us a little bit about yourself, a little bit more about Next Games.
Sure. Hello, everyone. My name is Yiannis. I'm heading the UA at Next Games, Helsinki-based studio. We are mainly known for our Walking Dead-based titles, No Man's Land and Our World. And we're now working towards a new Stranger Things game in partnership with Netflix.
Hi everyone, my name's Sam from Snapchat. Head up our performance team for advertising solutions internationally. Here today really just to meet with some of the up-and-coming gaming companies to show them an alternative to the duopoly and show you how there are alternate sources out there to have success.
Hi, my name is Satar. I'm the CEO and founder of Infinity Games. We develop minimalist and relaxing games for mobile platforms.
Hi, I'm Chris. I'm the co-founder of Boomzap. We're a 15-year-old independent game studio, largely based in Southeast Asia.
Cool. Cool, thanks guys. I mean, this panel is about tactics in the UA space, how to generate high quality users. So I want to just start off with, how do you guys measure ROI at your internal companies? What sorts of metrics do you guys care about? How about you?
Yeah, so obviously ROI is the main metric we're having, and always try to optimize as early on in the lifetime of the campaign. Mm-hmm. Nevertheless, for our type of games, which is more like mid-core to core, it's not always easy to do this in day one, so we have like a bunch of other metrics. We combine a more holistic campaign approach to optimize.
Cool.
Yeah, and then on our front, we obviously work with a lot of customers across a lot of different verticals. I think one of the interesting things we're seeing is this massive shift away from volume-based bidding, so trying to just get CPMs and CPI traffic, and really seeing this tectonic shift into ROAS. I think ROAS is still a very broad term, and it means many of a different thing to a different company. I think one of the interesting ones at the moment is the hyper-casual space, which I know quite a few of you in the audience are from, and seeing the shift into actually passing back ad revenue data into media platforms like ourselves and starting to optimize not only to just a cheap CPI where you know you can deliver ads to, but actually starting shifting towards those users that you can serve your ad inventory to in the most monetizable and effective way. So I think it's a very broad question with a very broad answer, but I really think we are just seeing the shift across the industry now from great volume, actually where's the value coming from? And I think value is what every business has to have that conversation with to work out, and then work with media platforms like ourselves or whoever to make sure that you're delivering the right results for your business ultimately to be profitable.
Yeah, I agree with you. What we see is that on hyper-casual games, they tend to target everyone, and from everyone. By targeting everyone, a specific percentage of people should like the game and install the game and have fun with it. But their targeting is very, very broad. And what we are doing and what we are trying to target is specific audiences similar to the best of our audiences in our games. So the people who buy our games, the people who spend more money on our games, what we do is try to find these audiences and find similar audiences to these ones. And that's what's driving us the highest ROAS right now, and our focus right now is ROAS. Previously, we were basically mixing organic impact from installs with the paid user acquisition. Sometimes we had negative ROAS, but in the end, overall our ROI was positive. But this new shift allows us to target the specific people who are willing to buy our product, in this case, our games.
So the question was, what metric are we really concerned with? For us, it's all about retention, right? If you can get your retention numbers up, everything else kind of follows. By far, when you've got, and we do deeper projects. We don't do hyper casual games usually. We have a couple, but most of what we do are larger sort of mid-core games, strategy games, that kind of thing. Something that people's going to put some real time into, and it's way easier to have somebody who's already invested in your project to sell him something as opposed to trying to get somebody who has has never given you money before and get money out of them. And so those retention numbers, the longer you can get those retention numbers, it's not just about you have more users, it's about you have users that are going to continue contributing money to your project. And so for us, we're very, very interested in long-term retention numbers. For us, that's by far the biggest metric.
That's great to hear. I want to kind of tag on to what Mohammed said about organic side. I think a lot of people don't focus on the organic front. We'd love to kind of get a sense from your guys' perspective. How valuable is ASO and the organic side to your user acquisition business?
In our case, we used to do organics more on Android because whenever we used to generate an install that was paid on Android, it seemed like Google was our friend and they generated an extra install just for us organically. But what I see is that this trend in terms of organics is decreasing because Google is also running ads within their platform and makes us focus strictly on ROAS. You have to spend money in buying users, and those users that you buy, they have to convert into positive revenue for you, into profit. So the less we rely on organics, the best. We used to rely a lot on organics, on our free games, but now that we are shifting more into premium games as well, we are not much into enjoying this organic traffic.
I'll make a point that I think you have to be very clear about what kind of game you're talking about. You know, earlier this morning, somebody was showing me their new game, and it was, you know, literally just doop, 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 you know, these super hyper casual games. Right. And on games like that, trying to get organic traffic based off keywords. Well, what's a keyword for? Doop, doop, doop? I mean, like, how do you draw somebody to your product with that? What would that keyword even be? Right? As opposed to if you've got a deeper project, you know, a game that you know that has a lot more to it that somebody can actually be interested in. Maybe you have a go-kart racing game or something like that that actually has a theme that people might be interested in, or a game design type like a card-based game or something like that that somebody might actually be searching for. I'm not sure that a lot of people are searching for your. I've never in my life searched for that game. So in that sense, how do you expect to buy keywords for that? It doesn't make any sense. People don't search for that. They get that from other places. So if you're doing super hyper casual stuff, like you say, it's going to make more sense to just go out and buy users because nobody's looking for that. But if you've got a project that has some real appeal to some group of people, then that suddenly starts to make a lot more sense. Does that make sense?
Yep. Yeah, I would say when organics is extremely important, but I think also I agree that it's really important, like, to understand which metric we are talking about. So it's not generic organic generation, but it's the organic uplift that comes from paid UA, but also in general about all the marketing activities. And we try to emphasize a lot in organics, and by this we mean mainly store page conversion optimization. So not so much about keywords, even though it is important, but let's say this takes about like 5 or 10% of our time, because store page conversion optimization is extremely important for the organic uplift, but also for paid. As we all know, like the most paid activity now is like auction-based, and in an auction you don't play alone, right? So it's better to focus on the things that you can optimize and depend entirely on you versus the things that you compete with others that you can always lose. There's always going to be, even when we're spending really high budgets, for example, some periods, there's always going to be somebody a bit higher or with higher budgets than us. So that's why we try a lot about like the store page conversion. Cool.
Yeah, and then I think on our end it's always about trying to, again, you should never put all your eggs in one basket. It should be a fine balance of paid, organic, and then I think even when you look at paid, people get so hung up on performance, and actually what we're seeing a lot of new apps, which, to be honest, stuff like mindful apps or wealth and well-being, these are such a new vertical in the industry as a whole. Yeah. Actually having to do some form of brand awareness and branding is actually also becoming increasingly important in a number of kind of the app economies And I think if you look at the gaming space in particular, it's a really interesting one because, again, there's so many verticals or sub-verticals within the gaming sector itself. It's so hard to give like a broad overarching theme to it. Yeah. But I really think where, again, the ones who are going to win is finding that right balance of paid, organic, and then within their paid channels, brand, performance, and then even within the performance channels, what's driving that upper funnel and then further down the funnel activities. Because, again, putting all your eggs in one basket is never going to make you successful.
Right, right. Just to add one point to that, I think that's really important. So as we say, organic is really important, but I wouldn't advise, let's say in general, to build a business case or a product based on the expected organic traffic. So I think like the product needs to be working on the metrics that are measurable and for which you can do something. So unfortunately, let's say these are mainly the paid associated metrics. Right. And then organics is something that will come as long as we're doing everything else right, including the game being like the product to be fun and the economy to be there and monetization and everything.
Oh, that's great. That's great to hear. Creatives. I mean, you're starting to see a lot of interesting creative types. You know, there was a huge explosion on playables. You're seeing rewarded videos. Where does creatives stack in your UA strategies? How important is creatives and optimization of creatives especially?
I think I'll start on that. I think on a broad level, what we're seeing across the board is, I think every media platform says this, so not going to pretend that this is our golden rule and only ours, but creative is becoming increasingly more important. If you think about the generation or people's user experience on phones now, poor mobile experience is no longer forgivable. And that's really what it boils down to. If you aren't gaining people's attention, aren't doing something which is initially captivating to them, you're going to lose. And I think Snapchat for us, when we launched our first kind of round of ads, everyone was thinking we're crazy, our ads are 3 to 10 seconds. And they were like, can you get a message across in 3 to 10 seconds? The fact of the matter is this has now become the norm within the industry. Increasingly more and more of our competitors are introducing story ad type formats, and this is because you can get your message across in a short amount of space. It's just key to be leading with things like your hero message, what exactly are people signing up to, and being very upfront with your creative. And I think where often I encourage our advertisers to focus on is actually building out a creative resource internally, because it's incredibly powerful and effective to do this. And I think all of the media platforms are making it easier more than ever to create ads. It's not just ourselves. We've got a fantastic tool, sorry for the plug, but Snapchat Publisher is an amazing tool to create ads within 10 seconds, but all the media platforms are making it easy for you to create these high quality visual ads. And to be honest, I really just don't think there's an excuse now to have a bad ad. Like, it's that those days are gone, and it's because it's what users expect. And if you're going against that grind, you can do all the bidding, you can do all the targeting you want, but you're not going to win in those auctions.
That's great.
I'd like to pull back a little bit about this question, and I want to talk about it from a user perspective, right? One of the issues that we had at one point was we had some creatives that were very successful in bringing us users. Yep. But our retention numbers were really low, right? What we realized was the most important thing about your creative is not, is this a good creative? Does it bring us a lot of people? It's, does it bring us exactly the right people, right? And the big thing that you need to be looking at when you're putting your creatives together is, who exactly am I targeting that's going to come to my product, they're going to like it, they're going to stay, they're going to enjoy it, right? And I've seen a lot of people that their head, they haven't made that logic, and it's, when you say it out loud, it sounds really obvious, right? But a lot of people don't make that logical jump, and they're just like, how do I get the most people to see my game? But you're paying for that, right? And if you're paying for them to come, and then they're getting something that they're not wanting, that's really a bad value proposition for you, right? So the real issue is not, can I make the best creative or the flashiest creative or the most interesting creative? Not that all that's bad, right? But it's, does this creative perfectly explain to the user what it is they're going to get, right? And in some cases, and I come from a smaller indie dev background, and a studio that makes smaller indie stuff, sometimes you need to make sure that it's clear that the thing that they're getting is going to be simple or indie or rough, or, if you're offering and I hate to say it like this, but if you're offering a B game and you're making creatives that are selling an A game, they're not going to be fooled, right? They're going to come and they're going to get your B game and they're going to say, well, this is not what you sold me, right? And they're going to leave, right? But if you're advertising something that, maybe it doesn't have the best graphics in the world, but it's got really interesting gameplay, and you sell it on that and people come with the right expectations, then you can get really good results out of this. And I think too many people miss that logical step, if that makes sense.
That's a great point.
I can agree more, and I think a good example of that is the amount of advertisers. That first conversation we have for them is who you're actually looking to target and what makes it unique for that individual. And it's funny because a lot of them don't think that way, and it is like you said, you think it's common sense, but I think often that's where a lot of people go wrong, is they sometimes maybe are thinking too broad on the mix, and I completely agree with you. It's about, again, understanding how that message is going to land for the different even segments within your app, if it's different kind of users for different experiences.
And I hate to dwell on this too much, but I have one more point, that this begins very early in the process, right? All the way at the point where you're deciding what game you're going to make, right? When you're figuring out what is it I'm about to build, you should be asking those questions about, well, who's going to play it and how do I target that person? And is there a place that I can target that person? And it's not always buying Google ads. It's not always buying Facebook ads. There's a lot of different ways you can target a user. Those are the ones that we go to because that's simple and easy and we know how to do it. But there are other channels that you can go get users from, which are not necessarily all free, but there are other ways you can pay for users. And you should be having that discussion with your team all the way at the point where you're figuring out what are we about to build. And a lot of people miss that step, and they build a whole project and they get it up to beta state, and then they're like, okay, how are we going to sell this? And that's a very late point in the project to have that conversation.
That's a great point.
Just one point to add is, I think from a general point of view, the click-through rate is a very important metric, especially for the ways the platforms are optimizing the campaigns. But one thing that I believe is creating frustration in general is that the way the industry is evolving and the way the profile of a gamer is evolving, it is not as easy as it was before to have a very specific persona, let's say, per product or per game. So when you have multiple, let's take our title is like Our World, or even like Pokemon Go, it's a similar title. I'm pretty sure there are a lot of different personas and type of gamers that are being attracted and are retaining and monetizing with these types of games. So in order to create a creative that is gonna be appealing to all of them at the same time, that's extremely hard, even impossible to do. So then the solution to that is to try to optimize the campaigns and narrow down the audiences without making them too narrow, with very specific creatives for this particular audience. Then the frustration comes when the networks, let's say Facebook, Snapchat, Google, they don't promote, they don't give more volume to the creatives with a higher click-through rate. And when you are optimizing everything based on ROAS, as I think is the absolute, let's say, advice I would give, then requires a lot of internal analysis, especially attention to data plugged into creatives, to be able to find exactly which creatives you should be insisting, even they're not having the higher click-through rate, to get the ROAS that you want.
That's great. That's great. We've brought up ad networks a lot. Sam being here from Snapchat. This is an interesting thing. You're seeing, traditionally a lot of the ad spend is going to still the large networks. You're thinking Facebooks, UACs. Where do the newer ad networks stack in there? Snapchat, TikTok. Where do you guys put those into your own user acquisition strategies?
I obviously have a bias on this one. I think for me, again, the fact of the matter is the duopoly is real. If you look at where the majority of marketing dollars is going, regardless of what sector you look at, be it kind of more traditional brands right the way through to digital structures and kind of the app economy, it's still within kind of the two big, the mammoths. I think for us, really trying to launch our platform into the market. It's been really interesting meeting with loads of different UA teams, loads of different media companies across the globe who, to be honest, first and foremost, they're not necessarily even aware that we have an advertising platform. The amount of times I meet someone, and we've been live now for about 3 years, and I meet someone and they're like, oh, you have ads on Snapchat? And I'm like, yeah, we've had them a while. My team really aren't doing a good job. But the fact of the matter is, all of these platforms are really kind of looking to open their doors and make it easier and more accessible. And I think for you as marketeers, it's really key for you to stay on top of it. I think it's increasingly harder because there's so many networks out there, but if you want to be achieving great success across the board, it's like I said, you can't have reliance on two companies. You can't have all of your eggs in two baskets, because what happens if one of those were to disappear overnight? And I think for us, what we're seeing is working with a lot of these advertisers, hand-holding them, getting used to building ads for a different network, because we are different. What we have started to see is actually we're competing and actually becoming sometimes people's second or first largest UA channel. So if for us, it's obviously a very broad question of how to do it, but my key advice to you is it's not just saying Snapchat, it's all other platforms out there. I heard a couple of gaming companies discussing Pinterest today. Like, there's loads of different platforms out there. It's on you as UA managers to trial, test, and see what works for your business, because your audience may not be spending most of their time now on where most of your ads are being served.
Yeah, as you were saying, there are different ways to lower your costs. It may not be only through Facebook ads. And the thing is that when you have more platforms and more audience available, you can decrease your CPIs, because you can target people that otherwise would not be possible. There are people who use Facebook on a daily basis, but there are other people who just use Snapchat or TikTok. And going into these trending platforms might be the best way to lower your costs and to reach audiences that were not possible to reach in any other ways.
I want to add something from an indie perspective. And again, I do stuff really cheap. I run a little indie studio. We do indie marketing. A lot of times we don't have, it's not that I don't want to be on Facebook and buying a bunch of Facebook. I can't afford the kind of ad budgets that King.com can, right? So we have to look at other ways of doing it. And one thing that you can look at doing is going and looking at other, and again, I apologize for the indiness of this, but some indies may enjoy it. Going and looking at other titles that are of similar, I guess, quality to what you're doing, right? And say, look, here's a game that's kind of in the same, it's fighting in the same world that we're fighting in, and go look at where they got press, look at where they got YouTube videos, look at who's streaming them, right? And a lot of times what you'll see is those are quite small channels, right? There's a bunch of YouTube video makers that are making videos for games that are similar to the game that I'm making right now, and they've got small audiences, to 200 to 1,000 people, right? Not huge, popular PewDiePie-style people, but they're out there, and they're extremely targeted, right? And those are people that are interested, they're committed to that, and it's for the cost of a couple Steam keys, right, I can go send these guys some emails and say, look, hey, you want to do a video of our game? We'll have one of our developers come talk to you, right? Oh, you want to live stream our game? We can have somebody come to your live stream and sit in your chat and talk to you about our game. These are things that you can do. It doesn't cost anything. It costs a little bit of time, but these are things that you can do that are directly going to bring you users, right? And I think one of the problems is we go directly to that, where do I go buy users space in our head, and there's a lot of other ways to go out and get users by putting in some elbow grease or putting in some time. We've had really good results going to small scale streamers, people who have maybe 200 to 300 people watching them at any given time, and saying, look, we're going to have a couple of our developers show up in your live stream, talk to you about it, play a multiplayer game with you while you're playing, and they eat that up, right? And it costs us what, a couple Steam keys? It's nothing. So I mean, there's a lot of stuff. I have another friend that has had really good luck with Reddit, actually. Reddit ads, by the way, are dirt cheap. And you can focus right down to if you have a community that makes sense for your game. If you're making a game about, I don't know, go-karts again, right? There's go-kart Reddits. And if you know how to do Reddit ads well and don't sell to them too hard, and go look on Google, there's lots of articles about how to do it properly, you can go directly to people who love go-karts, love stuff about go-karts, and get that ad directly to those people at a fraction of the cost of buying those keywords from the duopoly, as you say.
I would say I see the development of these platforms like Snapchat as an extremely positive development for the industry, mainly because I think that in this type of platforms like Facebook, Google, Snapchat, Twitter, etc., we are able, each one of the places that we as marketers we can touch upon and have more meaningful connection with the users. And even though now, like these days, especially with automation coming up, is not that apparent as in the past, but I do think that user acquisition is a marketing function, and I do not believe in the fully, let's say, fully moving this like user acquisition function towards analytics. I do think that specific marketing, traditional marketing techniques will make the difference in the future, and this can be applied in a much more meaningful and measurable way in platforms like the social ones.
That's a great point. One thing, having spoken with gaming companies, seems to be coming up a lot where you're seeing ad networks like AppLovin transitioning into gaming companies with their own line studios. You're also seeing Snapchat with Snapchat Games. How does that make you guys feel? Is there nervousness to spend with those sorts of networks? Do you consider them now competitors?
I mean, Line Studios owns, AppLovin owns Line Studios, but they are just a single ad network. There are plenty more ad networks with higher volumes, and they would also need to buy users from those ad networks to reach the top charts. So they are doing that. I'm not sure why other ad companies are not doing the same. I don't know. I don't know the answer for that. But it's working well for them, I think. They are with many titles on the top charts, probably with the knowledge that they got from AppLovin, and it works. The thing is it making anything bad for us that we are segmenting our audience to a very narrow public? Probably not. So I think it doesn't affect me. If I have my own audience and if I target my audience using lookalikes or using Snapchat lookalike tool, which is very similar to Facebook, I won't be fighting with them directly. So that's not something that worries me. I sleep well with that.
Anyone else want to add to that?
Yeah, I would say that like everything is in the end is performance based, right? So as long as the performance is there, it's the same I say about when I'm asked about fraud. So everything is performance based. So as long as performance and transparency is there, fundamentally we're in favor of the pie becoming like bigger. So there is no problem. But I do see the challenge for more like for the other side on that. Yeah.
I'd like to bring us all in the Wayback Machine to 2005, in the days of premium downloadable casual content on sites like iWin and Big Fish Games and I don't know, Gameloft and Real Networks. Anyone here remember that? Or did anyone here work in those days? Back in those, okay, all three of you. Back in those days, there were more than two places to sell games. It was awesome, right? And in those times when there were more than two places to sell games, those companies had to fight for, why would you buy a game from Big Fish Games instead of Real Games? Because they're offering the same content. And so their answer to that was, well, we'll have exclusive content. Well, how do you get exclusive content? You get exclusive content by actually paying for it. And again, I know none of you remember these days, but there used to be a day when publishers paid developers to make games. I know it's unreal to believe, but it actually happened. And back then, there was actual real development money available to developers to make games. I know, astonishing. So looking at this question that you're asking, this is exciting for me, because as we get, as the industry has moved towards, hey, we're going to make all of our money out of ads, having the ad companies, the people who are most invested in having content, actually want to own content. Come on, they're not going to run their own game studios and build all their stuff in their own game studios. They're going to externalize that. And as they externalize that, there's going to be chances for us, developers, to have somebody actually pay us to make games again, which compared to the absolute shit show that is development right now sounds absolutely wonderful to me. Because if anyone here has actually tried to get anyone to pay to develop a game in the last 5 years, you know it's damn near impossible. So that thing doesn't sound like a negative to me.
That's great. That's great. I want to ask a question about IPs. You know, you're starting to see companies like Disney going away from gaming and going more on the licensing side. You're seeing with a lot of media companies utilizing their IPs and licensing it. I mean, Yiannis, you know, Next Game's traditionally very IP-driven. How does the IP affect your decision-making on the UA side?
Looking at the IPs from a marketing point of view, I would say it's a great marketing tool, of course, there is no question about that. Helps in everything from the discoverability, searchability, store page conversion, lower CPIs, platform relations, like everything, right? The way I see it is an addition, so it's an extra advantage or weapon we have, and it cannot commensurate or substitute a lacking product. So like the product, let's say developing a product has to be there, like fun, balanced, like monetization has to be there, and then you have the IP and you can really be ahead in the competition. It's not that it's going to save you from doing any of the rest. But of course, it's a great tool.
I think for me on the IP, it's what the IP actually is. I think it sometimes gives you a head start in some ways because, for instance, if a gaming, a certain demographic is interested in a certain IP, it means you can target them from off the offset. And I think how you work with the IP owner and getting some of that data up front really can make it more powerful. So to me, it's how you use the information that you gain from the IP to then target more effectively on the relevant platforms. I think would probably be the best way, because let's face it, there'll be certain IPs which wouldn't be as primed and ready for my audience, but there probably is going to be IPs which, again, is perfect for us. So it's, to me, it just gives you that head start and knowing where to start with targeting.
I have nothing to add, that's all.
Just I wanted to add one point to this. It's a great point, but I think it also works the other way around. So like the way we are using, like we believe actually we are working with the IPs is like we're building upon the IP. So we don't rely only on the user base or the fan base of the IP to become our gamers, but we want to create new gamers, and our product No Man's Land, where you can see it went both ways. So definitely all the Walking Dead fans, they found a game where the universe, the atmosphere, the theme and everything applies perfectly. So it's actually it's a business case, it's a user case of an IP-based game. But at the same time, we know like there are a lot of people that they started becoming fans of the IP and start watching the series because of our thanks to our game. So and I think this is really crucial because we are not yet there unless we're talking about a massive IP, where the most engaged users are, or all the engaged users you need to build a successful and profitable business case are within the user, the fan base of the IP. Not yet. Maybe let's say in 10 years this will be the case when the gaming is spreading even more, but for the moment should be both ways.
Great. Cool. I mean, we're running a little bit short on time. I got one last question for you guys. It's a new year, 2020. What are you guys excited about in the advertising landscape?
Nobody's excited.
No.
Not a damn thing.
I think for us more, or probably a very, very macro level, is for us, we started our ad platform less than 5 years ago, very brand focused. The last 2 years we started to home into this concept of direct response and performance advertising. Last year we did an incredible amount of efforts of building the tools, building the stack, the infrastructure, and really going to market with our first kind of narrative of how to see success on our platform. This is the year that I really hope we open our doors to work with some of the amazing partners here today, and really just showing people that there are alternative platforms out there. And I think we have led the way in bringing new ad formats to the industry, and I hope we continue to do that. But ultimately, I really hope we start to lead the way in client success across multiple sectors, but obviously gaming being a big one for us.
Great.
Yeah, the exciting part on my side, I think it's these new platforms as well. Snapchat, TikTok. It opens us new opportunities to explore our creatives and testing these new audiences. What we are going to try is basically trying to understand if these platforms can also learn from our existing audiences, and if we are able to use their platforms at the current standards of technology. And that's what I believe it has to happen sooner or later with TikTok, with Snapchat. It's already happening. But what makes me happy is knowing that there are more and more platforms, and we are not relying only on the big Google and big Facebook, and we have more opportunities in other networks.
I'm actually going to go against all of this. The thing that excites me most about 2020 is that streaming is coming to, streaming is incorrect, subscription service is coming to games. And I think for developers, this means that maybe there's a chance to make games where we don't have to nickel and dime people to watch Ford ads to get them to play games. And we can actually make games that have a valid way for people to pay into them that doesn't involve constantly barraging them with ads. That's exciting to me, and it changes the way everything we just talked about in this conversation works. All of this gets readjusted when that happens, and I pray that it actually does stick.
I mean, subscription is growing, and that's why we are also shifting into building premium games, because then they can be better explored with the subscription, and they get more interesting to be explored with subscription. But the ads are here to stay, and the normal economy will keep on going, and the subscription might grow. And we are, for instance, on Play Pass. All of our games are on Play Pass. We are not on Apple Arcade. They didn't want us. But if there's anyone from Apple, I'm here. Just contact me. I've heard you guys pay lump sum amounts, so yeah, those good old times from 2004 would be again here existent. But if subscription grows, it's very interesting for developers. Then we need to understand who is going to dominate again. Is it Apple and Google again? Are we relying on these two big guys, because they already dominate too much?
Cool.
So,
perfect. We have a few minutes for questions. Anyone have questions?
Hey, so I've got a question for Sensor Tower. I'm afraid to fuck up your name, so I'm not going to say it.
It's all good.
So anyways, how do you define hyper-casual? There's a top chart, there's something like a hyper-casual top charts. How do you guys decide what is hyper-casual and what's not? Because it's actually not existing category.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I mean, internally, Sensor Tower, the way we tag hyper-casuals is the type the game is. So if you're seeing games that are won with not a lot of engagement from the user, it's very streamlined, very high level. That's what we would consider hyper-casuals. But we leave it up to the developers, honestly, to tag the games themselves. So we kind of go with broad. Yes, even in Sensor Tower, correct. Cool. Alrighty. Well, thank you guys. Oh, just one more. One more.
What are you guys using to measure ROAS? What kind of tools?
So for us, when we are kind of starting a journey with an advertiser, we always make sure, or we try to make sure, that they're integrated with one of the many measurement partners out there, so the Adjust, the Apps Flyers, Kachavas of this world. For me, these guys are great because they keep media providers like us honest, and it's an even playing field. Ultimately, they'll be measuring the performance not just of one media provider, but actually benchmarking us against each other. So for us, for me, my biggest recommendation is, if you have the funds and able to, integrate with one of the MMPs, and I do know a couple of them have actually started launching some free actual models as well to help smaller indies get started on measuring from day one.
We are using Tenjin. I think it works well for us, and in terms of cost, relation between cost and the impact it has for us is great, but there are many solutions around. Adjust, AppsFlyer, Kochava, you mentioned.
We use like all of them because we work with a bunch of different publishers, so we use whatever publisher X wants us to use. They're largely interchangeable.
Yeah,
You're not going to be more successful because you use one instead of another. This is not an important decision in your success.
Yeah, it's a combination of the attribution and cost aggregation. And then it's important to build internally the visualization that works best for you.
Cool. Thank you, guys. Appreciate you guys all staying in. Thank you.